It's coming to that time again when I want to update SquareForge, and in particular, I'm going to add some new signposts into this menu section here. If you don't know about SquareForge, I'll leave a link in the description. It's our rapid prototype template builder for Squarespace, something that we've been building over the last few years and have released it available for other Squarespace designers or business owners looking to build their first Squarespace website. And the idea is it will speed up the time it will take you to create professional looking websites in Squarespace. There's over 250 different structures available to you, and we're always adding and tweaking them as we go through, so every version will just be that little bit better. Today we're going to take this design here and convert it to something that looks more akin to this section here. So we're going to go with rounded corners, we're going to go with rounded buttons, although I'm not sure actually if I can make the buttons rounded because you update them by the overarching style. We're also going to have an image fit in perfectly at this top section with the rounded corners. If you want to go with straight edges, because it better suits your style, then of course you can make all of the edges squared off without any problems whatsoever. If you're interested in seeing how I created this demo design, I actually created a tutorial. I think it was a live session. Again, I'll try and dig out a link for you, where I took this design by one of our community students, Sherry, who's working on her very first Squarespace site. She actually managed to get this one live all off her own back, which is mightily impressive in such a quick turnaround. By joining the community, she has given me a really nice case study, so I was able just to spend an hour on it and show how we could make the design more interactive. Of course, this is still a demo, so things like the navigation don't work properly. There's a few things that I would have changed. If you're interested in that video, if you go to our live sessions on the Website Builders channel, you'll find it there. And yeah, it really breaks down how I came up with some of these concepts, going with slightly larger images that make better use of white space. I've been doing this for 20 years. It comes naturally to me now without having to think too much about building page layouts. But the important thing is this is actually built on SquareForge as opposed to from the ground up, meaning that we can cut some corners and get the designs in place much, much quicker. With that all in mind, let's have a look at creating this section. So I've gone onto the 4-column signpost, and if we look at the original example, we've got 4 columns here. If I've got time today, I'm going to try and adapt this to a 3-column layout to show you how that works as well. I'm going to build it from the ground up. The reason being is if I was to use the Square Websites Chrome extension tool, Square Websites Tools Pro, which I'm a huge fan of, it will allow me to take a section from one Squarespace website and copy and paste it into another. The only downside to that, in this case, is it will bring all the image assets across, so I'd have to go through and manually delete them. I know that makes a very trivial, small thing seem more laborious, but I thought I could kill 2 birds with 1 stone and actually talk you through the process of how I would build this layout from the ground up. It'd be great if you were to take a look at SquareForge and see if it's suitable for you, but if you don't want to make the purchase, this is how you build it. I need to go to the SquareForge master. This is squareforge.net, which is the live website. So we're going to just take that down. And this is our master template. So from today, this will be available and tested in this tool. In the left-hand menu, I'm going to go down to signposts and 4-column classic. I'm not going to start from scratch. What I'm going to do is try and find an example that, this one here, has all of the elements in that I need. And I'm going to adapt this one. I'm going to click Edit. I'm now going to duplicate the section. And if we were building this completely from scratch, what I'd be doing is adding an image block, adding a text block, a line, and these are all available via the add block option here. So if I wanted to add a line, in fact, I will build it from the ground up. I did promise that at the start, so let's keep to our promises. I'm going to move that down because we're going to use that same content. Save me having to write in just dummy placeholder text. I'll just drag that into place. But for structure, I can just copy this. So we're going to go to add a new image. I'm going to get roughly the size that I want. We can see the gaps here are pretty good, the gutter widths. Then we can go and add a text block. I'm not going to worry about the styling at the moment, but what I will do is actually copy this text and paste it in ready. Now it's cheated, which is great for me, but that doesn't really help you. So I'm just going to put it back to paragraph 2 and left align, which will be the default option when you go to add new content. I'm going to duplicate that block, save me having to rebuild it every single time. And I'm going to leave a gap where we're now going to add a line in between. I'm just going to leave it there for now, and we'll work on all of the spacing all together. Final option, we can add a button. Again, I'm not going to worry about the size or spacing of that button just yet. So we've got our elements in place. It's not looking very pretty at the moment, but we need to add one more, and that is going to be a shape that goes behind the entire container. But I'm going to leave that till last. Double click within this text block, Command A on a Mac or Control A on a PC to copy all of that text. And I'm going to drop it in to this content area here. Again, it's automatically centrally aligned, but you can change the alignment by selecting the text, go into left, center, right, or justify. I'm not a fan of justify in web. I think the spacing works well in books, publications where there's lots of print per page and the print size is quite small. But on websites, we want the content to flow. I much prefer left aligned or centrally aligned. The rule of thumb is generally, if there's not too much content, short widths and only a handful of rows, that can work centrally aligned. More than that, and especially if you're going over multiple paragraphs, make both of those paragraphs left aligned. That's just one trick to keep your website user-friendly from day one. I'm now going to align that heading to the center, and I believe it was a heading 4. There we go. Okay, so we're getting somewhere now. So you can see how I managed to get the spacing of this better, because if I bring the line up, it's going to be too tight to that title. This is just a little hack, a little workaround. I'm moving that content block up closer to the image, but now it's too close to the image, if that makes sense. The spacing is pretty grim. And I'm going to make that line shorter so it doesn't go across as far. I'm going to move this block up below. So that's starting to look better. And this time, I'm actually going to take this text block, click on it once, as opposed to what I did there was clicking the text, and you can see you've got the text editor options. We don't want that. We just want to click on the text block once, away from the text area, and we get a different menu. And at the moment, it's aligned to the top, but we can align it to the bottom. Now, by default, your text block, when you add a new one, might be aligned to the center, for example. So it's just using the alignment. So what we've got then is extra white space above the title, slightly less than below, but then those 3 blocks become nicely balanced. It can take a little while, and I've had feedback from students who just getting used to Squarespace, just to remember where all the features are, like for example, to click once to choose the alignment options, which is different to the text blocks option. The best way to learn this is just through practice. Have a play around with it, get used to it by working with it. This button style is wrong. So if we go to, say, secondary button style, and then if we click on this pencil icon again, we can go to design, and we can change it to fit. Okay, we can see that's not the same button style. So let's go for tertiary, and there we go. The fit allows a more balanced button sometimes. The spacing's preset. Even if we go across 2 blocks, we can see it doesn't expand all the way across. So it's a neater looking button when we're going for a smaller one like that. And we can see this one spans the full width of the block, and there's absolutely no harm in doing that here as well. Now we've got most of our button in place, we've got our image in place. Now's a good time to have a look at putting in a container behind that entire column. I'm going to go to add a new block again, and we're going to go with shape. And we're going to just drag it over the entire block at the moment. We're going to change it so it goes right to the back. And we're also going to go into the pencil icon, and we're going to change the color. So this is the color palette. It's monochrome on SquareForge for the deliberate reason that the moment you start bringing colors in, it starts to look more suitable for certain types of sites than others. So monochrome is just a really good template color palette to work from. But what I'm going to do is select one of the palette colors. And now I'm going to change the opacity right down to 0. So we can't see any of that block. And we're going to add a stroke. The stroke color will be white. At the moment it's medium. If you want chunkier borders and that suits your design, like that, you can of course keep it in like that. For this particular design, I want it pencil width. Sometimes it can be a bit fiddly because you can see the text block ends there, the button starts there. So there is a gap in between where we can click in that to select the shape behind. Otherwise, we'll end up selecting each text block or maybe the line option. So just find a spot where we know that there isn't another block, and we can hover over it. We can see these blue boxes, and we know then we're selecting the shape. Again, we'll go back into the pencil icon, and from here, let's go to the stroke option and go for either small, or we could even just drop it down to 1 pixel border by that option. And we've got additional options here. We've got a drop shadow option, which again can work really nicely for a subtle shadow effect. Because we're on a black background, that won't work on this particular design. But we could change it up in future and have a dark color like a slate gray and then have just a slight shadow on that. It would lift each signpost from the page. I'm not going to add that in. We'll just keep that as is at the moment. We can see here now we've got the rounded corner options. So I can either round one corner individually or I can round all corners. And I'm going to go with 20 pixels. The stroke color, I put it right the way down to 0 pixels, which is why we can't see it. So I just need to bump that up to 1. And we can see it's starting to take shape now, but it's not perfect. We can see the rounded corners here aren't cutting into this image correctly. So let's add an image. This will just be a colored swatch, because again, we try to avoid using photos because it means when you set up the SquareForge, one is it looks nice and neutral, so when you add your photos, it really comes to life. But secondly, it's much quicker to set up. There's not the same number of assets to bring across into your version of SquareForge, meaning that the installation process is so much quicker. I'm going to set this to fill, so it goes right the way to the edge of the container. And this time, instead of selecting all corners to be rounded, I'm going to select the top left and top right. Again, we memorize the setting we had before. So it was 20 and 20. There we go. We have now created or mirrored this effect here in here. Of course, we can adjust the height. So if we want more of the image, if it's a 4:3 ratio as opposed to 16:9, we can bring that image down and then move everything else down to fit it. But I think I'm going to leave it like that. And now I'm going to move these down. And now we're going to have the fun of working with this on mobile view. So I'm saving it, jumping over to mobile view. And we can see we've got a little bit of work to do to tidy this up. The reason I haven't created the other blocks or replicated the other ones first is because it's much easier to position one properly first and then move on to the others. Take that right to the back. Bring that block up. And now I'm going to move the text blocks into this container and move the container down to give us a bit more breathing space. I can always make it shorter afterwards and just start to align things. Here I could bring the text blocks in one either side, but then it starts to become really cramped. So I'm going to change the setting here. That will help. I'll do it in just a moment. That will help both the desktop and mobile view to give it a bit more breathing space. But first of all, let's get the spacing right. And it doesn't have to be exactly like for like between desktop and mobile. We really should be looking to customize it to suit each option. So I want it so you see the gold line, meaning that that's centered within the design. And I think on mobile view, I'm going to have this more compact. That's aligned to the top. So again, I'm going to move that up and try it aligned to the bottom. And we can see that that's better spacing. That's starting to look good. The only thing we don't like is the lack of white space either side of this container here. I'm going to move the Learn More button down a bit more because it's going to come down over another line anyway. We're going to save this, hop back over to desktop view. And we can see that's largely looking pretty good there. We're going to select this text block once. And we're going to style the background. There's no background on this at the moment, so we're going to cheat by adding a background. Then we're going to choose the background color, and we're going to put it down to 0. There's an invisible background color behind that. But what this allows us to do is change the padding. And we can remove the padding top and bottom because we want to keep that spacing. And then we can go left and right. So I'm going to go to, say, 8 or 10%, something like that. I've got 9% there. Sometimes when we put a background on it, it will change the color of the text. So we just need to go through and just change that back. Move that Learn More button up. We can then move the container up. But this is where we just fine tune it to our requirements. I need to find a section again where there's no content in behind it. And I think that's what I'm going to settle with. That's desktop view sorted. Save it again. Let's jump back to mobile view. And now we've got our template in place to work from. Back to desktop. This time it should be much quicker to wrap this up. I'm going to select all of these elements here, duplicate them, bring them across. and I'm going to bring the content into play. So again, copy that text here. Little trick here that will save you hassle of having to restyle it. I'm going to select everything after the first character. Then I'm going to remove that first character. That keeps all the text styling consistent. Otherwise, Squarespace will do its own thing with the text, and goodness knows what we end up with it looking like. Sometimes this will happen, so I'm Command A to select all and just put all the text back to white. So that's the second block done. We can select this one, duplicate all items together, and now bring in our third column. Exactly the same process. So I didn't actually put it after the first character, but it didn't seem to change that text size. Because it's set as paragraph 2, it's remained consistent. So you could try that, see if that works. But with the titles, we almost always need to do that properly. Coaching and mentoring, final one. Let's get this in place. And again, I'm doing this before I put the links in the buttons or do any individualization to each of the blocks, simply because it becomes easier to do that afterwards once we've got the structure in place and checked on mobile. Okay, so this is where we got our first inconsistency. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to just edit that text down so it fits with the others. In a real world environment, I would recommend doing the same thing, tweak the content so it's roughly the same length, so we end up with consistency across, or make all containers deeper, so bring them all down so it suits the latest one. But we will end up with bigger gaps then, like in this one here, between the content and the text. When working in web, it's always a fluid design, which means that we have to design with that mindset. It's not like designing a brochure where we can get everything pixel perfect exactly as we want. We just cannot do that in web. Different browsers, different screen sizes will all adjust how everything looks. Now if we go to mobile, there'll be issues with spacing in between them, but that's much quicker to update than having to move all of these blocks on every single one on mobile view. And believe me, if you were to do it the other way, where you build all 4 blocks and then go to mobile view, you'll end up with a much messier layout to edit. So do them one at a time, then duplicate, get them in position on both desktop and mobile so they're all looking really nice. And that's when you'd individualize things like the buttons and even the content style. Let's see what you think. We've got another design here. I could have used this one as well, which has got straight edges with no image. So let's go down, and I want to finally move the position of this block, if I can find it, just so it goes in between these sections here. So let's move this down and down one more. And we're going to add a new section above. And I got the blue line, yeah, in save sections, I've got the blue line there. So now we can add it above. If I wanted to create a 3-column layout, then I can save this one as a favorite, hop over to the 3-column layout page. I'm just going to do it quickly in here and add it in from the favorites. This time, I'm just going to get rid of the 4th one. Select all blocks, and I'm just going to try and drag it across to see how it works. That's not turned out too badly. So again, I can make these images deeper, but that's how I can create a 3-column layout. Of course, I just have to double check it on mobile, make sure it's not put any rogue spacing in place. No, that's pretty good. And that's why I love Fluid Engine on Squarespace. Once we've got the 4-column layout, it's really easy to replicate that to 3, to 2, etc. The only one we can't do is a 5-column layout, simply because this is on a 24-column grid, and 24 doesn't go into 5 evenly, so we'd end up with one of the columns or multiple columns being the wrong width compared to others. That's where we'd use the list style, and I've created a load of tutorials showing how we can do that, and there are list styles available in SquareForge. Hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Hope you found it helpful. If you need to, go through it a couple of times, and the best way to do this is to create a free trial on Squarespace and start playing around with it. If you want to save all of that fuss, SquareForge is available in 2 areas. One, it's available for $297 as one-off fee. You buy it once and you get to replicate it as many times on as many websites as you want. But even on one website, it should save you hours and hours of time. It certainly does for me. Or you could join our coaching community on SKOOL, SKOOL with a K. And that's only $97 a month. You get SquareForge and all future updates as part of that subscription, and it's on a month-by-month basis. Not only do you get SquareForge, you get access to me through weekly catch-ups where I can coach you how to use the Forge and how to build professional-looking websites with Squarespace. If you're not interested in any of that, I hope this helps you, and I'll see you very soon with a new tutorial. Cheers!